Immediately after the elections of 2024, something incredible happened. Search queries about how to leave America surged by 1,500%. This is not a typo, 1,500%. But what is truly shocking? This is no longer just discontent on the internet. Millions of Americans quietly make real plans to leave the country forever. I have been tracking this trend for several months, and what I discovered will amaze you. By the end of this video, you will understand why smart and wealthy Americans are already packing their bags and why you should consider your own exit strategy. Because what lies ahead will force millions of others to make the same choice. So stay with us. These 7 minutes could be the most important of your year. First, numbers don't lie. Let's talk about real figures. In 2024, nearly 5,000 Americans visited U.S. embassies worldwide and did something that seemed unthinkable just a few years ago. They officially renounced their American citizenship. This is 48% more than in 2023. Think about it for a moment. These are not emotional decisions. These are people who paid $2,350 just to never be Americans again. But this is where the madness begins. This is just the tip of the iceberg. A new study showed that 1 in 4 Americans, or 25% of the population, is now seriously considering moving to another country. 1 in 4. And do you know who is leading this process? Young women. 40% of women aged 15 to 44 say they would leave the country forever if they could. Just 10 years ago, this figure was only 10%. It has increased fourfold. These are women in the prime of their professional lives. Women who are supposed to build careers and families here. Instead, they are studying the requirements for obtaining visas to Europe. And this is what should scare Washington. More than half of American millionaires, people with real resources ready for change, are likely to leave the country after what happened in 2024. When the rich start to leave, it signals that something grand is approaching. Secondly, the nightmare of the cost of living. Let me describe what is actually happening to ordinary Americans right now. And I warn you, these numbers will make you angry. Here is a fact that should scare every American. In this vast country of 50 states and over 300 major cities, there is only one place where a person with a median income can afford to buy a home at average price. Just one, out of all the major cities in America. We are talking about places like New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Miami, Seattle. They are completely inaccessible to ordinary workers. Think about this for a moment. We speak of nurses who save lives in hospitals, teachers who educate our children, police officers who protect our communities, firefighters who run into burning buildings. These people, who were once a reliable bastion of the middle class, are now completely deprived of the possibility of owning a home, except for one tiny corner of the country. And even this place, you probably have never heard of. But wait, because the situation is getting worse. Much worse. Since the year 2020, just 4 short years ago, food prices have soared by 25%. Your electricity bill, which you open with dread every month, has also increased by 25%. And if you need a used car because you don't even dream of a new one, then you're out of luck. Prices for used cars have risen by 35%. Last week I was talking to my neighbor Sarah while we were both checking the mail. She is a single mother, working as an accountant, doing everything right. She told me that her family now spends an additional $200 a month just on groceries. The same food, the same store where she has been shopping for many years, the same family composition. $200 have simply vanished. This is $2,400 a year. For most people, almost a month's rent just disappears into thin air for the same grocery bag. But what is truly shocking about our healthcare system? Last year, America spent $4,900 billion on healthcare. In comparison, this is more than the economy of most countries as a whole. It amounts to $144.70 for every person in the country. Newborns, pensioners, everyone. And what have we received for spending more than any other country in the history of humanity? We took the last place. The last place among all wealthy countries in the quality of healthcare. You heard it right. We spend more per capita than any country on earth, yet we achieve worse results than literally everyone else. People in Canada, Germany, France, and even in countries we never think about live longer and healthier while paying about half of what we are forced to pay. Meanwhile, Americans are forced to cut back on insulin and go bankrupt due to cancer treatment. My cousin Jake had a heart attack last month. Relatively minor, thank goodness. 3 days in the hospital, several tests, standard treatment. His bill came to $47,000. Most of it was covered by insurance, but he still had $8,000 in debt to pay off over the next 3 years. The same treatment in Germany would have cost him $0. Oh, and here's another blow below the belt. If you were one of the few lucky ones who managed to buy a house before this complete madness began, thinking you were safe, think again. Property tax has increased by 27% in just the last 5 years. So even if you saved enough money to buy a house when prices were relatively reasonable, now you are being squeezed by taxes. Some families see their property tax bills increase by $300, $400, or even $500 a month. And what truly angers me in this situation is that the government continues to assure us that the economy is in excellent shape. They refer to stock market indicators and GDP growth as if that means anything to a family choosing between paying rent and buying medicine. Meanwhile, 65% of Americans say they feel financial pressure, at least part of the time, each month. 6 months ago, this figure was only 58%. The situation is worsening, not improving. Now you begin to understand why smart, educated people with opportunities no longer just complain about it. They do not wait, hoping the situation will improve. They look at these numbers, calculating the future of their family and realizing something absolutely frightening. This is not a temporary economic turmoil that will resolve itself. This is a new reality. This is what life in America looks like today. And for millions of families, it is simply unbearable. That is why this exodus is not a political whim. It is a measured decision for survival, and it is just beginning. Third, the political crisis. Now everything is getting really serious. Remember Kevin and Jessica Kuru? They are teachers from North Carolina, ordinary people, right? Last December, they had only 48 hours to make a decision that would change their lives. They received a job offer in Morocco, 48 hours to decide whether to take their 2 small children and leave America forever. What prompted them to take this step? The election results announced just a few weeks ago. Jessica told reporters, "We are leaving chaos. I feel that the America we knew in childhood is quickly fading into the past." Think about this. A teacher, a person who actually shapes the next generation, feels such despair about the future of America that they decide to move with their family to North Africa. And they are not alone. The figures coming from foreign countries are simply shocking. Great Britain has just reported that over 1,700 Americans applied for British passports in the first quarter of 2025, a record number since records began in 2004. In Ireland, it is observed that 4,700 Americans are applying for citizenship based on ancestry, the highest quarterly figure in 10 years. But what really caught my attention is that these are not just random people leaving the country. This exodus is led by young women. 40% of women aged 15 to 44 now say they would leave the country forever if they could. In 2014, this figure was only 10%. This is a 400% increase in just over 10 years. And when you delve into the reasons, it becomes even more alarming. These are not economic refugees. They are educated, qualified Americans who simply no longer feel safe and do not feel represented. 60% of Americans living abroad feel they are not fairly represented by the U.S. government. They watch from abroad and think, why should I return? This is what brain drain looks like, friends. When your brightest mind starts seeking a way out, it is not politics. It is a national emergency. Fourth, the tax trap. Well, now we move on to really grim topics. Do you think life is expensive? Wait until you hear about the tax nightmare that makes people literally renounce their citizenship. Buckle up, because here, the American dream turns into an American trap. Here is what will amaze you. Out of 195 countries on the planet, only 2 pursue their citizens for taxes, regardless of where they live. These are the United States and Eritrea. Yes, this is a tiny dictatorship in Africa that most Americans wouldn't even be able to find on a map, even if their life depended on it. We are essentially using the same tax policy as one of the most brutal regimes in the world. Let that sink in for a moment. But wait, it gets even worse. In 2010, Congress passed a law called FATCA, the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act. And believe me, it truly lives up to its name, as it devastates the lives of Americans abroad. This is how it works, and it will definitely make you angry. Every foreign bank on the planet must now monitor American clients and report all information to the IRS. Everything. Your account balance, salary transfers, even the 20 euros you spent on groceries in Paris. And what did foreign banks start doing? They looked at this huge paper nightmare and said, "No way." They literally hung up signs saying, "Americans not allowed." I'm not joking. There are Americans living in London, Tokyo, and Sydney who can't even open a regular checking account in their area because banks don't want to deal with Uncle Sam's paperwork. Let me tell you about Fabian. This guy was born in America but moved to France at 18 months. He doesn't speak English, has never worked in America, and didn't even know he had a social security number. One day, his French bank sent him a letter, calling him a potential tax evader because he had never filed tax returns in America, for money he had never earned in America, for a life he had never lived in America. The poor guy had to hire expensive tax lawyers to prove that he owed nothing to a country he barely remembers. And this happens to millions of people. Americans abroad spend thousands of dollars each year preparing tax returns just to submit documents showing they owe nothing. Consider this crazy situation. They pay accountants to prove they owe nothing. It's like being forced to hire a lawyer to prove your innocence in a crime you never committed. Now, this is where it gets really crazy. People are so tired of this mess that they are literally renouncing their American citizenship. It speaks of wealthy, successful people, doctors, engineers, business owners who have built lives abroad and can no longer endure persecution. The official number nearly reached 5,000 people just in the year 2024. This is a 48% increase compared to last year. But even to escape this nightmare, you need money that most people don't have. First, you need to find a U.S. embassy or consulate that will even agree to accept you. Good luck with that. The global waiting list has just exceeded 30,000 people. 30,000. Some have been waiting for 2, 3, or even 4 years to get an appointment. And when you finally get this meeting, the government charges you $2,350 just for you to renounce your citizenship. But here is the real treachery. Before you are released, you must prove that you have filed tax returns for the last 5 years and paid everything they believe you owe. Even if you have no debts, even if you have never lived in America, even if every penny of your income was earned in another country, you have to go through all the bureaucratic procedures to escape a system that was never meant to affect you. Here it is, the trap for taxpayers. As soon as you are born an American, you are effectively caught in its nets for life, unless you are wealthy enough to hire expensive lawyers and have the patience to wait years for government permission to leave. It's no surprise that people call this a modern version of the Berlin Wall of East Germany. Only this wall is made of paper, not concrete. And the craziest thing is that while all this is happening, Congress sits and wonders why America's reputation abroad continues to decline. Perhaps the reason is that we are the only developed country that treats its citizens as criminals for daring to live somewhere else. Now let's move on to something really interesting. Honestly, it struck me when I first saw these numbers. I spent weeks trying to figure out where these Americans are going, and what I learned will change your perspective on the future. Portugal has become the absolute #1 country that Americans are eager to leave for. And I'm not talking about a small difference, but a real flood. More than 116,000 Americans participated in this survey, and Portugal led in all categories. But what no one talks about is the reasons for Portugal's popularity. Firstly, their Golden Visa program effectively rolls out the red carpet for Americans with even modest savings. We are talking about the possibility of obtaining European citizenship for the sum of only 280,000 euros in the form of real estate. This is less than the down payment for a decent house in most American suburbs. But that's not all. Portugal's healthcare system ranks among the top 10 in the world, while ours is at the bottom among developed countries. I speak of a quality of medical care like that of the Mayo Clinic, but at almost negligible cost. My friend, living in Lisbon, just underwent a full medical examination, including tests, and it all cost him only 37 euros. This is the amount we pay for one prescription here. Now France, Spain, Greece, and Switzerland follow Portugal, each attracting people with its own magnetic field. France draws entrepreneurs and creative individuals with its new talent visa program. Spain attracts remote workers with its digital nomad visa, allowing tax-free living for the first year. Greece actually pays people to move to its islands. Some villages offer free houses and monthly payments to attract young families. But what struck me the most was the unprecedented speed of this process. According to the same data, 2/3 of Americans considering this option want to leave the country by 2026. Which is literally next year. What is truly alarming is that 12%, or about 1 in 8 people, plan to take a decisive step within the next 6 months. We are no longer talking about dreams for the future. These are people who already have specific exit dates marked on their calendars. And this is what the mainstream media completely missed. 18% are deliberately seeking visas for digital nomads. These are those who have figured out how to maximize life. Earning an American salary, they live in countries where their money has 3 to 4 times greater purchasing power. I know a programmer who moved to Portugal last year. He has the same job, the same salary, but now his rent for a beautiful apartment in Porto is less than he spent on groceries in San Francisco. Meanwhile, 30% are planning their retirement escape. And when you look at the numbers, you will understand why. The average Social Security check barely covers rent in most American cities. Yet the same check in Portugal allows for rent, healthcare, food, and still leaves money for weekend trips to Paris. This is not even comparable. Now, what really surprised me is that Canada is no longer in the top 3, even though it's very close. You would think proximity matters, right? But here's the thing. Even Canadians are now facing a serious cost of living crisis. Housing prices in Toronto and Vancouver make New York a more affordable option. Therefore, Americans are looking beyond the obvious choice and showing creativity. Truly smart people are already taking steps while there is still an opportunity, because this is what most people do not understand.